Wes, how do you feel about the movie Inception?
I thought it was good, but it's Christopher Nolan, where it's good, but it sits there in this sort of middle space of what I think about it. I liked it, but didn't love it, I guess would be the way that I'm thinking.
Yeah, I've noticed it's a fairly polarizing movie. It seems like people either really enjoy it or don't really care for it. I thought it was great, and I was really excited to see a 90s television low budget version of it, but they didn't quite have the same budget as Christopher Nolan coming off The Dark Knight, so for better or worse, unfortunately.
Yeah. And they also broach male love in a way that I don't think Inception really gets into.
Arguably, it probably should have gotten into that, because there's a lot of dudes who are just broing down in that movie.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah.
Nary a stray pinky crosses the pinky of another man in that movie.
I was listening to a Ringer podcast or something that really stuck with me about it. It's the way I think about Nolan movies now, is that every leading male in a Nolan movie is Christopher Nolan, basically. And it really makes sense when you think about it. They're all very stiff British characters. Like, even if they're not British actors, they are written to and performed in a British way. Mm-hmm. And yeah, he really inserts himself in his very British, semi-autistic outlook on life in these interesting movies.
I do wonder what his relationship with his wife is like, because I don't think his movies are very warm. They're generally very cold.
Yeah.
And the weak points tend to be the relationships between men and women in his movies.
Love relationships are tough. I think most in The Prestige, where it kind of relies on that a lot, he comes across as pretty cold with both the lead characters and their significant others. Yeah,
that one, even Batman. But you know, this isn't the Christopher Nolan podcast. We should probably talk about Star Trek.
So let's take a break. I'm going to play some music, and then we're going to talk about extreme measures.
Accessing library computer data.
Out there are no saints, just people.
So this episode is called Extreme Measures. It is the 23rd episode of the 7th season, aired on May 19th, 1999, written by David Weddle and Bradley Thompson, really cementing themselves as the opposite of the go-to group of writers for this series. Directed by Steve Posey. In this episode, Bashir and O'Brien lure a Section 31 agent to the station in a desperate search for the cure to the disease that is killing Odo. We've only got 2 episodes left after this one. Extreme Measures. Clay, this is a bad episode. Outright, it's probably the worst episode of the entire arc that closes things out.
Okay. I don't know if I would go that far, because I think there was potential, and I was riding on the potential train for a lot of this episode. And once they get to the point where it's O'Brien and Bashir laying in a hallway having an extended conversation about how they definitely don't want to kiss each other. At that point, I was like, is this really the right time to be doing this? And should it really take this much time? And should it be done in this way? And all of the answers to those things, I think, are no. But
see, that moment's the only moment I kind of like out of this, because, well, I think it's so weird and strange, and it's
so long though.
It's so long that is kind of the problem. It's maybe not subtle enough, but to me, it feels in the same way that the writers are like, now that we're at the end of the series, we're really going to say what we've been thinking for 7 years. You saw it in Ezra and Worf talking about the Klingon Empire in the last episode. Sure. And now you're getting it here where it's like, we're not gay, but we love each other. You talk like the writers are just sort of stating what they think about these characters. And it's super long and super weird, but it might be a case of the wrong place, wrong time for this story. Like, it may be a little bit earlier to get this out of the way would have been fine, the relationship between those two, but I find this episode incredibly boring. And also incredibly destructive to Section 31 in a lot of ways.
We're trying to lure someone from Section 31 here to the station.
Section 31? What do they have to do with this?
We believe that they were responsible for infecting Odo in the first place.
What?
We believe that he became infected 3 years ago when he underwent a medical examination at Starfleet headquarters.
Evidently, Section 31 hoped that Odo would transmit the disease to the other founders when he linked with them.
I also think it's destructive to Bashir, and... Sorry, I got an ambulance going by or something.
No, fire truck for these hot takes.
The writer police are coming to get me. Because I think the tone of this episode is way off. Because what's actually happening in this episode is really interesting if you break it down into what like the high concept is. But they don't recognize it enough to really lean into it at all. Because what's happening is Bashir is crossing the line from TNG Roddenberry character into Section 31 territory. He's sinking down to their level in order to defeat them.
Yeah. Which
should be a huge deal. And especially if he's going into the mind of Sloan and bringing O'Brien with him. That was my favorite scene. One of my favorite scenes is when was when Bashir is like, since I'm genetically advanced and I can control my brain and heart rate to the point where I won't get freaked out and I can wake myself up, I'm the one who should do this. And then O'Brien's like, I can't do any of those things, but I'm also coming. It's like, what? No. But like, you know, having O'Brien there, who is a literal direct line from Bashir to TNG, as well as being his best friend and or possible lover. This story should be essentially like Apocalypse Now, where Bashir is descending into, or Heart of Darkness, if you will, is descending into the depths of what Section 31 is and what he's going to have to do to get this information. And getting to there at the end where he's finally got everything in his hands, he's got this like immense power that he could use to completely destroy Section 31. And that's when he has to be pulled back and realize that, no, this isn't the way to do things. So he gets the cure, he cures Odo. But the end of this episode should not be Bashir and O'Brien joking around playing darts.
Yeah.
The end of this episode should be Bashir being like, what the fuck did I just do? I just invaded somebody's mind after I kidnapped someone, invaded their mind, and tortured them essentially for the sake of getting this piece of information out, which granted did work, but that's even scarier that he just validated that Section 31 does things the right way.
Right. Yeah. No, it's a great point. I mean, I hadn't really considered it that way, but it's true that the story should just be the sacrifice of his original belief system in order to get the job done, and then he ends up with blood on his hands in a lot of the same ways that Section 31 would do. I think it is probably in a lot of ways, I guess the problem with that is that they leaned into the Bashir and O'Brien story too much.
I think I think you could still do that, but I just think the context at which they put it in just doesn't have the same emphasis that it could have if you really, you know, gave it, if you put the O'Brien and Bashir story into this other story about Bashir losing his way and O'Brien being the one to be able to pull him back, then it's so much more powerful.
Yeah. No, I like that. I think the tone is not just a miss on that. I wonder if that's like even it's obviously that's what the writing intent is, but it feels like the episode just doesn't focus on any of that whatsoever. It doesn't. It's so strange in what it does focus on. I mean, first and foremost, I think it's almost laugh out loud comical how easily Sloan is captured in this episode.
Yes.
Like it's the Section 31 has spent their entire existence over hundreds of years not being caught by anyone. And the idea, like, it's almost so obvious that you expect that Sloan has been expecting him to be caught and he's sort of going to play this against them in some way, but it's not. They legitimately capture him and brainwash him, and then he tries to kill himself. And I also hate good guy personality schism Sloan in his brain where he's like, hey, I'm nice Sloan, like I really want to do what's right, so I'll give, oh shit, he shot me. Luther Sloan, I love that his name is Luther, but Luther Sloan has no part of that personality in him, I don't believe.
No. And what's I kind of feel like I would love to know if there is a first draft of the script that is closer to what I'm talking about, because that scene with good guy Sloan feels like it's supposed to be a mirror for Bashir, where you've got this one part of him that is a good guy who was then corrupted by this pull of Section 31 into turning into what it inevitably became.
Yeah.
That scene is fucking dog shit as it appears in the show. But like the intent or possible intent of what might be the idea there is actually really interesting, but I don't know if I'm just writing a better show in my head. I'm not sure.
Yeah, so that scene is funny. It's just Sloan giving like a thank you for coming speech for 5 minutes.
It's a thank you for coming speech where he's telling everybody in his family that he loves them, and every time they cut to everybody else, they look like they don't know why they're there. His fucking wife and his daughter look like they're just standing there doing a camera test for lighting. When he's like, there's a point in the speech where he says, okay, nobody cry. And it's like, dude, don't worry. Nobody is anywhere near to emoting at all, let alone crying.
Yeah. No, it's the fact that they captured him, I think, is awful. Like it's just terrible. Or if you're going to have him captured, he needs to be able to be in control of the situation at that point, and you need to come up with some better reason why he's not just kind of fucking with them or something like that. Like, it's just everything that we've been told about Section 31 to this point is erased by what happens to him in this episode. It's just, he's such a, and I like him because he's such a cool character to me. Like, he's kind of, he's a little bit the tropey, really like super agent guy who's kind of nebulous and everything like that. But I think the performance is really good, and I think the idea of Section 31 is really good. So to have it be so easy for Bashir and O'Brien, and the other thing that's easy is when they realize that their inception point, right, that they're still in the dream, that is the easiest, silliest reveal of all time, where they just open the door and step out, and it's the dream hallway again.
Yeah.
Like, what's going on? Why? I don't know. I just thought that felt like such that you have a plot outline of the twist is going to be they're still in the dream. But when it comes out, it's just like, hey, we're still in the dream. Oh, okay. Let's go open that door then.
Yeah, let's go back to the thing.
We'll end the episode. There's no problem with doing that.
Yeah, that door that Sloan is actively stopping us from getting near. Let's just go back there now that we figured out the first time. I mean, I guess you could argue that, he's close to death, so he doesn't have all of his dream world powers or some shit.
Right, he's having trouble holding him off or something.
That was the biggest, tone aside, that was the biggest letdown for me, was that whole sequence of being in the dream. Like, I didn't even question for a minute that with the fake out when they wake up, I was like, oh, okay, I guess that must be legit, because nothing else they've done in the dream world is trippy or weird or anything, so there's no reason to believe that they didn't just leave.
Right. I think they even exposed their hand, because they have Sloan consciously wills Sisko and Worf to try to stop Bashir from doing what he's doing. Worf comes up and grabs Bashir on the shoulder in a way that's like, oh, this is not really Worf. Like, I think they go too far in even over-explaining or over-showing or over-hinting that it's not the real thing when it's plainly obvious.
But I actually I didn't catch it at first, because I just expected it. Nothing about what I had seen before made me think that it was going to be clever in any way. Right. So I was just like, okay, I guess they're out now, and now they have to find, like, the idea in my head that, they fucked up and they didn't get it, and now they've got to figure out another way to save Odo, was more interesting to me than
going back into the dream.
More of a possibility than them going into the dream. It's like, I don't know if you watched any of, I know you watched Daredevil. Did you watch any of Iron Fist, the Marvel Netflix show?
No.
So this episode, which sets up where it's Bashir and O'Brien going into Sloan's mind as he's dying, and Bashir is like, yeah, man, it might get fucking crazy in there. It's gonna be nuts. I don't know if you're going to be able to handle it. I don't know if
This is a highly trained operative of super secret mind techniques. He knows everything.
And so your first thought is like, oh, shit, this should be like Inception. This should be like Doctor Strange or something. And it's just two guys in the same hallway.
Yeah,
there's
shot
5 minutes. There's 5 minutes of them not understanding or being stuck in the elevator and being afraid to move in the elevator. And then they exit the elevator and they're in like one stretch of hallway on Deep Space Nine. It wasn't even like the other things where it's like, oh, why are we in Deep Space Nine? Oh, well, this is the negative mirror evil version in my brain. So you have free reign of Deep Space Nine to do cool shit on Deep Space Nine. This was a hallway of Deep Space Nine.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it reminded me of Iron Fist, because the setup for Iron Fist is that you've got this character who is the world's greatest fighter. He's defeated all of these, the other monks in his martial arts group or whatever, and he's beaten a literal dragon to earn the power of the Iron Fist. So he's the greatest fighter in the world. And so you're thinking this show is going to be like, oh shit, this is going to be awesome. It's going to be tons of fights. It's going to be crazy. There's going to be all sorts of stuff. Maybe it's going to be like a tournament or something. And then you watch the show, and it's like 95%. It's like watching the show Suits. It like most of it takes place inside boardrooms of businesses.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the guy that they got to play Iron Fist can't even fight. So, and he doesn't wear a mask. So like they can't swap him out for a stuntman who actually can fight. So you're left with this like really cool concept, but the execution is just like, what if we had, I know you want to see the guy with the glowing fists punch people and explode stuff, but what if you like stuck with us for 13 episodes of this like corporate hostile takeover story featuring characters you don't care about?
Right.
And
yeah.
that's how I felt about this episode, where it's like, okay, you're setting this up like it's going to be fucking wild.
Yeah. It's also, yeah, not to,
it doesn't even raise itself to the level of a mirror universe episode. Where it's like the lights are off.
Right.
You know?
The most boring because they've kind of done this one before. Do you remember the episode Distant Voices where Bashir goes into the guy with like electrical power? Yeah, it's that story
exactly.
Again.
Yeah. And they made full use of the station.
Yeah, so he walks around in the station. Yeah. Yeah.
I can only imagine that this is as stilted as it is because like they were shooting another episode on the regular stage or something.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I think maybe even the bigger problem to me, besides the fact that the plot setup is so silly and everything like that, and that the low budget stakes, it's the problem is that this episode resolves a huge plot point in the arc to this point. Odo getting cured is an enormous plot development here, and to have that come off such a weak, like shitty adventure from Bashir and O'Brien is really kind of disappointing. And it's like, as much as I like those two, and as much as I like the pairing and their sort of conversations with each other and everything, like I don't know, like I think the problem is if you're not going to do a sort of idea like you were talking about with this script, I also would rather have Bashir and O'Brien's relationship be summarized some other way than this.
You mean like with a kiss?
Yes, with a kiss and a pat on the bum and everything like that to move them on. I think it fails. I think it's extremely unsatisfying in virtually everything it sets out to do. Like whether it's curing Odo, resolving the Bashir and O'Brien storyline, resolving Section 31, resolving the cure, all that stuff. Every bit of it is like, this is so boring. Every portion of this is just so boring.
Yeah. The only thing I thought was really good, I actually really liked the first scene with Kira and Odo. Because I mean, I don't know if it was a little bit influenced by the death of Rene Auberjonois or what, but I thought that scene was really nice.
Yeah.
And it was a good emotional scene between the two of them, especially coming off the last episode, that felt a lot more real to me than let's entwine our arms and share 2 drinks at Vic's the way they usually handle it, you know?
I mean, I know this is a Bashir and O'Brien, but wouldn't it make sense to have Kira and Bashir go in for this secret? Because Kira has the personal connection of like, we have to accomplish this goal.
Sure. Well, again, I guess it depends on what you're trying to do with the episode and what you're trying to do with the story. Because like, if you do, I'm trying to think about this in the parameters of the story they tell versus the story I wish they told.
Right.
And if you're going by the parameters of the story they did tell, probably yeah.
Well, I guess I would counter that with O'Brien needs to be the voice of reason that tells Bashir to leave, and if Kira and him are both in there, they both would want to stay in the dream world.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of, because like if you're going the way that they go here, and you switch out Kira for O'Brien, then most likely the dynamic flips, and Kira is the one who is willing to do anything, and Bashir is the one who has to be the voice of reason.
Yeah, that's not as satisfying.
Yeah, then you're not even getting close to this idea that Bashir is stepping over a line, even unless the way that works is if everything that happens in this episode is predicated by Kira like being the catalyst for it. So like it's not Bashir who comes up with the idea to drill into his brain and go walking around in his thoughts. It's Kira who does that. You know what I mean? Like where Bashir's like, there's nothing else we can do. I'm sorry. And Kira's like, fuck you. Think of something. And then he's like, all right, well, I guess we could break into his brain and just do it, you know?
Yeah,
like that kind of thing, where it's like, it's about her finding a line versus Bashir finding a line.
Yeah, and I guess you could make a conflict about if they're in the brain and they're needing to get out of there. Bashir wants to stay to destroy Section 31, and Kira has to make this crisis of faith choice between Odo and getting out of there, kind of.
Sure.
I don't know if that really works. Like, I guess O'Brien is kind of integral to this whole thing. It's just that his importance seems so subdued here. It's like I don't even like the scene where he has to pull him out, because I don't. Maybe it's to your point that I don't think they approach the Bashir and Section 31 thing as strongly as they need to, but I almost think that Bashir is being foolish at the end. It's like, come on, dude, like get out of there. Like what do you need to do? Because I don't think they sell Bashir wanting to take down Section 31 in a way that lands with me. They do have the character say multiple times that that's what he wants to do, and that's like the best thing for it, but it just doesn't it doesn't feel believable to me that that's his real motivation.
And it's also, I mean, I guess you can kind of hand wave this as the magic of stories and whatnot, but like, how was he planning on bringing all that shit out with him?
He's going to read it real quick and memorize it and get out.
I guess, you know, it's like he's got all these data pads and shit and papers and stuff. And he's like, everything here is what we could use to blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, okay. I mean, you've already read apparently like a bunch of it while you've been standing there. So theoretically you should have committed it to memory. I don't know.
It's the Nightmare on Elm Street. Whatever he hugs really tightly and wakes up, he'll be holding when he pops out into the real world. Yeah.
Like, I guess there's a difference. I don't know how he was planning on getting all of that information out. I mean, there's a difference between memorizing like a gene code versus memorizing 400 pages of J. Edgar Hoover files, you know?
Yeah, there seems to be a thing that this episode is kind of a trope to me in Star Trek and probably a lot of genre fiction, TV genre stuff, where the idea is sometimes too big for an episode of television to get across. I think that one that this reminds me of is A Matter of Perspective on TNG, which has this great idea of Riker is visiting a planet and someone dies there. And so to reenact what happens, they go on the holodeck and they have Riker and this other guy who was there tell conflicting stories about what happened, and they reenact it on the holodeck.
Right.
And that's such a cool idea. It's obviously, it's obviously been done in Rashomon and stuff like that. And like, you know this story, but to do it in Star Trek is cool. But however, the writers came up with this idea, but it's almost like they don't have enough time to really flesh out how to make that idea interesting on TV. Yeah. So the murder investigation is super boring and super bland and nothing really interesting about it.
Is that the one where like they actually solve it based on information there's no way they could have possibly known? Where it's like they do the holodeck thing and then they do like a 360 turn and there's another guy hiding behind a box or something. But neither of those, Riker nor the other guy, saw that person, so it's completely, there's no reason why that information should be in the holodeck.
No, they solve it by they get some kind of computer information about like a little explosion that happened right before Riker beams out, and they reenact it by the guy shoots Riker with a phaser as he's beaming out, and it reflects and it shoots the generator and blows up and something like that.
Oh, that's
totally different. You might be thinking of the there was that one where Geordi turned into an alien, but he did that really creepy holodeck reenactment of the alien standing in the picture? Like there was a shadow on the wall that he couldn't figure out?
Yes, that's what I'm thinking of.
Okay,
yes.
yeah.
It's funny because I was thinking while I was watching this, I was thinking about the Prisoner episode A, B, and C, where they go into Six's brain and reenact this party sequence to try and trick him into revealing his, who he's working for and all that kind of stuff.
The information that they need.
Yeah, and I liked that one because that one turns into like an active push and pull game because he has time between sessions to kind of figure out their game and figure out how to play their game.
Yeah, the battlefield becomes a playground for them in that case, in a way that it doesn't here at all.
And it gets trippy and weird in a way that is not super high budget, but is still really satisfying because it's just weird and strange, and it's a very dreamy party. But yeah, this is just so boring.
That's the weakest part. The whole in brain sequence here. If you're in the mind of a super secret agent, it needs to be more creative than this, than him just meeting Good Guy Sloan, which is terrible. Good Guy Sloan is about 10 minutes of the episode, and it's awful. There's no reason for that to exist. And if Sloan is not more adept at putting up blocks to prevent them from getting this information, I don't know how Section 31 exists. Like there has to be a better way than this.
Yeah, it wasn't interesting. It was
How is there no Sloan arguing the point of view that killing the founders is the right thing to do?
I know. Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, why not? Nobody says that ever.
That's the only. That's the whole point. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, has anybody floated that at all since this idea has come out?
Just Section 31. No one's talked about the benefits. There's no Cisco scene where he's like, you know what, this is it sucks to be Odo, but we are losing this war at this point. Maybe something needs to happen.
Yeah, Cisco doesn't even for a second consider it as maybe the right thing to do.
Yeah.
He just goes genocide.
But
and that's kind of it.
I'd rather have that come from Sloan because that character is better at delivering that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah. Yeah. Again, and that would play on Bashir's morality that he is already in the process of going against to do what he's doing. There's got to be a more interesting way to do this stuff than just like a hallway full of locked doors. And it's a hallway full of locked doors, and then once they get back to the door, it's like boop boop boop. Oh, it's opened this time.
Yeah, came in.
I don't know. I guess he's dying or whatever. But when they got into the room, I actually liked the room.
It's cool. It's like a Hobbit house or something in Star Trek. It's very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was a nice literalization of what Section 31 is. Like, I really like the stuff where he was like, if you want to destroy Section 31, we don't have like a base. We don't have like a store.
We're the internet of evil agencies. Yeah.
Yeah. Our server isn't in Ukraine.
Right.
Because that's not how this stuff works.
Yeah.
But it was a literalization of what's in his head. And it was all messed up because he's dying and stuff. And I thought that was really nice. I thought that was cool.
Yeah. No, it is a nice, that's the only nice symbolic measure of being in Sloan's head is that final scene. There were two things that I thought were a cool dream imagery, which was that one. And I also liked the bit where good Sloan is like, yeah, man, no, totally. I came here to give you what you want. And then he says it and it's like it's like gibberish. Yeah. All right.
I thought that was kind of fun. Yep. Also, Bashir finds out that it's a dream still, using the same logic from the Batman the Animated Series episode, which is when it comes to reading. In Batman, you can't read when you're in a dream, but in this one, it was you can't. He can't read past a certain page of A Tale of Two Cities because that's as far as he knows in the book.
Yes, they just copy pasted it.
Sure, yeah, why not?
Start it over again. Page 227. Esri's read this book 5 times and she never noticed that problem.
I know that was some. If you can make the case that O'Brien is dim sometimes, but him saying that maybe the book starts over is probably the dumbest thing he's ever said. I mean, he is an engineer. Maybe he's thinking of like instruction manuals, how after the English section it starts over and this time it's in French.
You never open to the English section right away when you got those
never
things,
never.
let's do 5 minutes on Bashir and O'Brien, I guess, just as a character
Because they want to
pairing.
do 5 minutes on each other.
That's right. O'Brien loves his wife. He loves his wife.
Sure.
The more he says that, the
Sure.
more he convinces himself that this is the truth.
I did really enjoy that stuff where he's like, I love my wife. And Bashir's like, yeah.
Bashir's
sure.
like, I can say it, baby. I can say it. It's no big deal. He's like, I love
And I
love Rayuka. I love her very much.
I like that they even kind of went overboard with the Esri stuff just to have it swing back the other way where he's like, I love Esri. Passionately so. But I just like you a little bit more.
What do you think of their...
He's like you like me a little bit more. He's like, yeah, like
bit.
you. Just, like you.
It's that stiff upper lip British syndrome, I guess. They just can't have trouble opening up to each other. I mean, is like, what do you think of these guys' pairings over this series?
I enjoy it. I think it's a good combination. It's not one that I would have thought made sense initially. But it actually kind of does because, like I said, O'Brien is a literal tie to TNG, and Bashir is very much that sort of character. Yeah. So I guess it makes sense that they would hang out.
Yeah, I wonder if they overdid it.
Yeah,
between the two, they're so together all the time in the later seasons. Yeah. Like they just booted the O'Brien family out of there, obviously, and we're like, you two hang out because it works better. But I feel that they became. I did like it when he's like, no, this isn't a dream. Keiko's in the other room, and Bashir was like, is she? Go kiss her right now. And he's like, I don't. No, I'm not going to do that. She's asleep, my man. I can't go in there. I think they became codependent in some ways, particularly O'Brien. I think he just became codependent on Bashir. Bashir still had some of his own standalone stuff that he was doing later on, but I think O'Brien really suffers later on because of it. And I think like when we get to it, I think O'Brien might be the weakest DS9 character out of all of them. I think so too. Which is surprising going into it, but I think that his relationship with Bashir is a big reason why that's a part of it, because he just becomes he becomes kind of the annoying nag, not annoying, he becomes kind of the nag character to Bashir's optimism in a lot of ways. And it feels like he no longer is the chief engineer of the station as much as he's just Bashir's buddy who doesn't want to do things with him all the time. Yeah. And that's lacking. Oh, sorry, go ahead. But that's it. It's just, I think it lacks in a little bit, but I like the pairing. I think the friendship is good. And I like their scenes together and everything, but I think they depended on it too much. Yeah, I think they kind of forgot how to write for him without Bashir around. And I don't know if that's due to the fact that everybody on the writing staff is like a single guy or something. But, the stuff when they did write for him, when it wasn't a Bashir-centric story, and it was with his family and stuff, it never rang true. It never really worked. He just ended up kind of becoming this character that only worked as a foil to Bashir. He kind of turns into a bit of a counterpoint machine for Bashir. Yeah, it's unexpected. I wouldn't have expected O'Brien to turn out that way by the end of the series, but I mean, is it really that surprising though? Like, does he really have that much interesting going on? No, he doesn't. But I mean, they screwed up everything that they were trying to make his character point. Like the family's bad. Sure. He's a decent engineer, but I think we've talked about this before. O'Brien tends to be the character in this series that has the Crusher role, Dr. Crusher role from the TNG, where if they couldn't quite figure out who was perfect for a story, they gave it to O'Brien. Sure. Just for the hell of it. And so he ends up with kind of a schizophrenic personality where his stories are all over the place, and he's playing an undercover cop in one episode for some reason. Yeah. And he's chief engineer in another one. So he's really ill-defined in that way. Yeah, I think for better or worse,
they had 1 or 2 episodes fairly early on where they just knocked it out of the park with him, as far as him and Bashir. Like the one where I guess it's not that early on, but the one where they get trapped on that planet. They got to get away.
I think he's even
That
stronger
episode's-
in the first 2 seasons. He has a couple standalone O'Brien episodes that I think are his best stories through the rest of the series. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they when they paired him with Bashir and they had episodes like that one where they worked together so effectively.
You're talking about the one where they, what is it called? Hippocratic Oath, where they're conflicted about curing the Jem'Hadar of their addiction.
Yeah. I think that became sort of like a chasing the dragon kind of thing, where it's like, well, this was so great. This is a great pairing.
Yeah.
Why can't we should put these guys together all the time? And then they do that, and it never quite strikes gold the way you did the first 1 or 2 times.
Instead of an ethical conundrum, what if they play Alamo with each other? It's like, oh boy.
Can I talk? Is the Alamo stuff going to pay off? Just tell me. Does it ever pay off? Because they talk about it so much.
To my recollection, it does not pay off.
How do you have a thread go through your story to the extent that they did with this Alamo shit, and then not even have it be like a metaphor?
I might be wrong, and hopefully I'm wrong, because it is, on this rewatch, it's so prominent in their 2 storylines. I might be wrong. I honestly don't remember it if it is a part of it.
I can't not think that the last 2 episodes, or what do we have, like 3 left?
2. It's just 2.
Just 2?
The next one, and then the finale. Yeah.
Oh, the finale is a double parter, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I can't imagine that it doesn't end with some sort of like siege on Deep Space Nine or something, because that's like like the Alamo. And if that isn't what happens, then I don't know what they were doing. Unless, again, like I said, unless the Breen take off their helmets and it's Santa Ana,
They mentioned Colonel Travis
and Data with that sombrero on. In that one episode.
The Mexican Data. Did they mention Colonel Travis in this episode? Is that what happens? Did they mention him? They mentioned him recently,
no,
I think.
They mentioned him a couple, either last episode or the episode before. This one, they just mention it in passing when they're talking about how they like spending time with each other and not other women. Why didn't they just have them kiss?
We'll have,
or like, I don't know. They should have.
Maybe the Discovery Culber and Stamets brushing their teeth scene was an homage to this, where it's like the unmentioned sexual tension between 2 people who just need to get it over with.
Yeah. I mean, you could have had them like kiss or something, and then it'd just be like, well, it got really crazy inside. It was in that other guy's mind.
We didn't know if we were going to get out. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, he made us touch butts. It's not that we want to do it. But I mean, do you want to do it?
We'll have more to say about Bashir and O'Brien, I think, in our wrap up. We're getting to the end, but this is their final. There's only 2 episodes left, Clay. We're at the end of this thing, basically.
That's wild, man. I don't know. I don't know how to feel about this. I gotta say, I'm a little bit disappointed in this last slide here.
Yeah, this one didn't. I mean, you were very excited the episode prior to this, and then this one came in like a bucket of cold water, and it's just like, calm down. Yeah.
I think I was, going into this one, the beginning was really good, and I saw what they were doing with Bashir, what I thought they were doing with Bashir, and so I was ready for this to be really great, and it is not.
Let's take a break. We're going to play an audio clip, and then we'll come back. We'll read some patron thoughts, give our final thoughts about Extreme Measures.
That'll have to wait.
It's not that simple, Chief. There is no building, no room like this in the real world. Section 31 has no headquarters. These files, they exist only in the minds of a very select group of people. And I happen to be one of them. If you really want to destroy Section 31, it's now or never.
If you enjoyed the content, you can support the show at patreon.com/the Pensky File. It's the best way to do it. A couple $1 a month, and you get extra podcasts. You get the ability to vote on what we cover. You get all that good stuff, live streams, everything like that. So you go to patreon.com/the Pensky File. As always, our Captain Tier supporters there get a shout out. Special thanks go to Andrew Chirlog, Ben Douglas, Captain Quark, Cardinal Doomsday, Christian Michaels, Christian Pouch, Darth Mosk, David Beardmore, David K, Dwayne Hackett, Eric Johnson, HH28, Yarp, Joint Mango, Jordan Cooper, Kevin Reyes, Kyle Barrett, Matt Courier, Matt Cutler, Matt Ross, Mike Burnett, Nathan Elliott, Neil Brennan, Nick Sergi, Robert Cummins, Russell Elledge, Samuel Custer, Grim Santos, Sean, Tarek Latif, Tom Hiles, Vault 13 Hero, and Will Yates. Thank you very much, guys, for supporting the show. Get out of my mind. I'm about to eat my sci-fi cyanide capsule to kick everybody out of there.
And into my car.
Into my car. All right, let's go to Patron thoughts. If you're a patron, you can leave your thoughts about upcoming episodes, and we read them on the podcast. Captain Quark says, excuse me, I like the tactic that Bashir used to lure Sloan to the station, but it's disappointing that the writers employed the deus ex machina of Bashir and O'Brien inceptioning themselves into Sloan's mind as the way to find the cure. I would have preferred Sloan's capture and interrogation with the Romulan mind probes to be the conclusion of the story, not the beginning. On a final note, I understand that O'Brien and Bashir's bromance scene was supposed to be awkward, but why did it have to be so long and so talky? Actions speak louder than words. Just kiss already.
That's why they never got together, because they knew it would just be long and talky.
That's right.
You know, also, why the Sloan thing, again, doesn't make a lick of sense. Like, so if he shows up there and he doesn't know that Bashir was fucking with him, what is his plan?
Why does he talk to Bashir at all?
Yeah, he shows up and he's like, I've got another mission to send you on, Doctor. And he's like, actually, no, I tricked you. And he's like, what?
Doctor, it doesn't say in your file that you sleep in your uniform. What's going on here? Like, it's just
like,
so
what?
Stupid.
Unless he was going to somehow convince Bashir to destroy it himself or something, why would you even talk to Bashir?
It doesn't seem a super secret spy thing.
Why would you send Sloan?
Right,
Bashir knows this guy. Section 31, send the guy from the dream who shoots them in the hallway. Yeah. I don't know who the fuck that guy is.
Yeah, it's probably not the best super spy technique to do exactly the same thing that you did last time to introduce yourself. To just show up sitting in a chair in a bedroom. They probably are waiting for you to do that. Let's see here. Next comment. Point Extra G says, so it's a change of pace episode. This is Julian and Miles going for a romp through Sloan's brain. It's kind of weird that these two get a whole episode to themselves here in the last bit of the show. When will these two express their true love for each other? Norman Buckwald says, welcome to the sons and daughters of this arc. It should have been a more proper, it shouldn't have been. The most proper expectation, most suitable story would have been about O'Brien and Bashir on an adventure dealing with and doing their best to outwit Section 31 and Sloan. Instead, we get distant voices in Sloan's mind. This episode is nonsensical and the plot twist was way too obvious. I would have rather had Tacking in the Wind be followed with Dogs of War with some offstage solution of Bashir and O'Brien finding the antidote in between. 1.5 out of 5.
That's not satisfying either.
No, there's no good solution. Zam Nuclear Wessel says, I'm mixed on this episode, but I do like the different versions of Sloan we see. Only the first and the last match up with the man we knew, but they all still feel like insights. As Garrick said, it's all true, especially the lies. Christian,
I have to say, when Bashir was like, who knows what we'll see in there? We might even see Sloan as a child. I was like, oh, fucking Christ.
Just a child in leather.
Oh, we're going to get like a walk through his history or some shit like that. I mean, they basically did that, but they did a much more boring, lazy way of doing that. But
it's just
I was
Sloan's
totally
father.
expecting. I was totally expecting they show up and then there's like a little kid there and he's like, follow me. And like, who's that kid? And Bashir's like, that must be Sloan as a child.
Yes.
You know, and I was like, oh, fuck. I was waiting for that. And arguably they did something worse. So
it's just a flashback of Sloan's father hitting him while saying the ends justify the means over and over again.
Did you watch the most recent season of Stranger Things?
No.
So, well, there's a sequence where they like essentially do this, where they have to go into someone's mind and whatever, and they use it as an opera. They go into like the bully's mind, and they just do like a 10-minute sequence where it shows the history of this kid and how he ended up as a bully.
Yeah,
and I was like, okay, I don't know if this is really that necessary to learn why this shitty kid became a shitty kid. Yeah, but. Whatever.
You always have to know where people came from, I suppose.
Guess what? You don't.
Christian Pouch says, so this episode is pretty weird. A strange tangent from the main thread of the war. I wonder if Sloan could really be captured that easily, but I kind of like it. I like that Bashir resorts to the level of Section 31's own tactics to get what he wants. I like that Sloan is still playing with him even inside his own head, which he proved he could do in Inter Arma Enim Silent Legis. And I enjoy seeing Bashir and O'Brien working together again after being largely sidelined. It's not as good as Inter Arma, but it's not that bad either. Neil Brennan says...
I just want to say, I do have to say, I think the time has passed now because it's too big again for them to cast a lesser-known actor. Unfortunately, that's the term to use. Alexander Siddig would be a fantastic Bond villain.
Yeah, he would be. Right.
That scene where he's doing the stuff to Sloan, it was essentially, do you expect me to talk? No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die. And he's very good at it.
Neil Brennan says, Extreme Measures, 1990s credits equals instant spoilers. Good to know that Sloan is going to turn up in the episode before he's even seen on screen. Speaking of the 1990s, the O'Brien-Bashir heartfelt conversation would be an hour-long fuckfest in any modern TV show.
I did also notice that, where they were like, who knows who they'll possibly send from Section 31? They could be anyone. And then the credits are like, it's that guy, the only one we've ever seen.
Yarp says, great to see William Sadler again. They should have used him more in the show. Section 31 was a bit underutilized in DS9. The episode itself feels like a bottle episode, but it's still a pretty good outing and a good use of O'Brien. In modern times, they'd probably make their relationship into these two are totally gay for each other instead of two guys being bros and having fun. Sloan is one of those characters who you think you'd like to know more about, but probably better to keep things shrouded in mystery.
Here's a question. Does a relationship like this always have to end up with them making out with each other? Isn't them kind of recognizing the Brokeback Mountain type tension almost enough? I'm not saying that because, I don't want to watch them kiss or anything like that. It's just like, isn't there something almost more appropriate for them to kind of come to the realization that, there's something else going on here, not necessarily acting on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like just having them make out. I would say it's the same kind of thing I say with Odo and Kira, where it's like, I don't know if them actively like acting out whatever passion or whatever is necessarily the right way to go all the time. I think there is room for degrees of relationship revelation.
Yeah. Well, here's a question for you. We're in kind of an era of, men are too emotionally stunted and things. Like a lot of male problems tend to come from the fact that we're not allowed to expose our emotions or anything like that, or whether it's like a society thing that's holding us down, or whether it's a biological drive for men. I've when they have episodes of this on TV and stuff where these guys are like, here, we're just really good friends, which I think is what the episode is saying, kind of, because I don't know how directly it's saying that this is a romantic interest in each other.
Right.
But I like, do a lot of guys have deep relationships? Like they're trying to portray O'Brien and Bashir here. You know what I mean? Like I don't have male friendships that approach this level of, this is borderline a romantic interest in each other. Like I just don't see that in male to male relationships. So it's strange that they're trying to.
Did you ever think that maybe that's you?
That's why I'm asking.
The problem is with you. That nobody wants to stick around, Wes.
I feel like it's a portrayal of male relationships that doesn't seem realistic to me. And like, I'm glad they're friends and everything, but I find it so unrelatable just personally that it seems to me more like it's a disguise for these two in a show that I think was more true. What you're saying is kind of fits better, that like they have some kind of romantic interest in each other, even if they don't pursue it at that point.
I don't know. I mean, I think it's fairly common, I would assume, to have like a friend, especially in a situation like this, in a Starfleet situation on a ship or something. It makes sense to me that there would be one guy that you kind of become really good friends with, and he's just the one that you hang out with.
Over your family? I guess that's
maybe not over your family, but maybe they push it a little too far. But like the idea of them having just a really close platonic male friendship is not. I don't think it's that weird.
No, I don't think it's. Well, no, I don't think it's weird. I don't know. I just. Yeah, it must just be it's personal. I guess it's all personal preference. It just seems. I can't think of any males I know who have the O'Brien-Bashir relationship.
Sure.
Really. Like, it just seems unrealistic, or that the show, like, is the show poking fun at this fact that they are basically in a romantic relationship? Because I think the show kind of does that a lot of the time, where it's like wink, wink, like this is Like, this relationship is deeper than either of these characters are willing to let on. And I don't think that's... Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I definitely don't think that they have that scene in the hallway here because it's the writers honestly recognizing that these two have something more with each other. I think it's them recognizing that it seems like these two are really into each other.
Okay.
You know, it doesn't feel to me like they are being honest in being like, yeah, no, these guys actually do have a really close relationship and
oh,
whatever.
I see. So you think the fun continues through this episode? This isn't so their interaction at the end is not really it's more played for comedy, kind of. Then is what you're saying?
I think it's kind of I think it's kind of a little bit of both. Where I think it's I don't think it's the writers. Yeah, I think it feels to me like maybe I'm not giving them enough credit, but it feels like at the time where this was made, it's not a sincere revelation about their relationship as much as it is them kind of being like, yeah, we like each other. That's not weird.
Yeah,
it's not that there's anything wrong with that, you know?
Yeah, I guess so. That feels weird. That feels the wrong place to do that kind of storyline, I guess.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I
think it's better if you read it as sincere.
Yeah.
But
it doesn't play that way for you.
I don't know. It feels a little bit too. That scene goes on so long. It's like it's clearly a joke.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, and it's like, they're not. I don't know. I think reading it as sincere is probably the better way to go. But I don't know if it was written as sincerely as it should be read.
Samuel S. says, I both really love and really hate this episode at the same time. What I hate is the storyline. This episode reminds me of 1950s sci-fi, but in a bad way. O'Brien and Bashir wearing those goofy-looking helmets spitting out pseudoscience BS was just ridiculous. What I loved, however, were the character moments that the two have in their final adventure together. The conversation about liking each other more than their romantic partners I found especially delightful. Overall, this is a bad story riddled with good scenes. 3 out of 5. Final comment, Kyle Barrett says, the idea of going into people's minds or dreams, everything holding some weird symbolism and Lynchian dream logic is my favorite kind of TV episode, which makes this my least favorite episode of the arc because everything it does is so poor. It's such a wasted concept with no real thought behind anything. There's nothing to analyze, and whether down to budget or writing, setting the whole thing in 2 rooms in a corridor is incredibly boring. The episode wastes so much time, too. It's too long before they enter Sloane's mind, and when they get there, they spend 5 minutes joking about letting go of the turbo lift handles. I know there's a conspiracy theory that Christopher Nolan got the idea of Inception from this episode, and I may give it a bit of credence because Sloan also says something very similar to the "it's not who I am underneath, but what I do that defines me" line from Nolan's Batman in the episode.
Well, that's Batman, though. That's not Inception, so theory busted.
It's a very important work of art for Christopher Nolan. This episode.
He got his idea for Batman from this episode. But not Inception.
Overall, while it's still much better than the similar Season 3 episode Distant Voices, I think Extreme Measures is a failure and the only straight-up bad episode of the final arc. 2 out of 5. Thank you, patrons, for your thoughts. Thank you for supporting the show. Clay, what are you going to give Extreme Measures on a scale of 1 to 5?
Have I given a 1 at all in this last run?
No, you haven't given a 2, I don't think, either. So if you want to go 1, we give a bunch of 3s, then a 4, then a 5.
I'm going to go with 2 because, like I said, I'm really riding the potential train on this one, and that obviously doesn't really help if the episode does not meet that potential. But I think there are a couple good things in it. That opening scene is really nice. The scene in the hallway, or not the scene itself, but like what they end up doing with those characters is fun and nice.
Yep. I like Cisco in this episode.
Yeah, Cisco was good too. Yeah, I wish
I think I have to put the clip of in the cold open where Bashir is explaining. I love when Avery Brooks reacts as though he is really Avery Brooks and not Cisco anymore. He goes, "What?"
It's like that clip of Krusty the Clown after they play the European Itchy and Scratchy, and they cut back, and he's just, "What? What the hell was that?" It always reminds me. I don't know. Did you watch the X-Files at all? A lot?
Not a lot, but a few of the episodes. Yeah.
There's an episode, one of the better episodes. I can't remember the name of it. It's a very Rashomon type episode, and someone is explaining what they saw which includes when Mulder and Scully show up, he's recounting what they did when they showed up. And it's very tongue-in-cheek and it's very meta. But there's a certain point where Mulder comes over and like lifts the sheet off this body and just goes, ah! And he's like, I didn't do that. And he's like, no, not exactly, but that's what I got from it. You know, that kind of thing. And that's what it reminds me of every time he lets out a little squeal for some reason.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think I have to give it a 2 as well. What's the argument for a 1 here? Is it like...
I think the placement of it is terrible.
Placement of it is bad. I both in terms of the arc, you mean. I think of just like it's one of those weird, with 2 episodes left in the series, you give this is one of them kind of thing. The same way I approached TNG, but
like it's so strange because the placement is bad given where you are in the series, but it's also bad because the placement you have is you have the potential for it to be a very affecting episode. Given all the stuff that's in play, whether it's Bashir crossing the line or Odo dying, they don't even cut back to Odo at all in this episode. Yeah. He's just there at the beginning, and then he's fine at the end. It's not like he's on a timetable at all either, you know?
No, that's what's so strange about his sickness arc in this is that it feels so inconsequential to everything.
Yeah. And you know, if they had used the positioning and the story that they were telling to more effectiveness, then maybe it wouldn't be a bad placement. But as it stands, it's bad placement, it's bad execution.
No, I like your point about if this was to show Bashir Breaking Bad, basically, it's a great finale for him, Section 31, and the series, where Sloan, even as Sloan dies from his sci-fi cyanide capsule, he said he still took down Bashir. He still changed him in a way. And made him see that he's been wrong for the past couple of episodes, and they don't do that. Yeah,
they don't even do something as simple as like having a shot inside as everything's like falling apart inside the Section 31 room, where like O'Brien turns around and Bashir is wearing the Section 31 uniform or something. You know what I mean? Like they don't even go that deep with it, and it's like there's so much stuff. You've had this character that you've been driving to this point for 7 seasons, and you finally put him in position to tell this story, and you completely blow it.
Yeah. No, 100% agree. I mean, is that a 1?
I think if you look at this episode on its own merits, metatextual aside, I would say it's a 2.
Right.
But I think it's a 1 in the context of the whole series.
I'm gonna give it a 1 for its placement in the final arc. You can stick with a 2. I'll give it the 1 just to knock down the average a little bit. I think I was tremendously bored while watching this, and it might be that thing that we always mention where they're so late in production at this point that they just can churn out a competent thing even if it sucks at the same time. And this is pretty much a huge misfire for closing out Bashir, a misfire for where it sits in the season, and a misfire for just the final arc, I think. So I'll give it a 1.
I think the 2 also is like as crummy as this kind of is. I would rather watch this than watch Worf and Ezri travel to point A to point B and then intercut with fucking Kai Wynn reading a book. Yeah, you know.
Yeah,
like I think it's not the worst stuff that they've done. I just think it's the most potential wasted.
Yeah. Okay, you'll give it a 2. I'll give it a 1. Thank you very much, patrons, or all the listeners for listening. Patrons for supporting the show. We've only got one left, the Dogs of War, and then we go to the finale. So we're excited. Or I guess we'll do the Emissary revisit, which seems like it'll be the thing before the finale. So we had that vote on Patreon, and people decided that they wanted to hear us revisit Emissary before the finale happens. So that'll be the order. I'm just
gonna make fun of Sisko's hair the whole time.
Their paunchy suits, and we'll have a lot to talk about that. That probably won't be a super long podcast, and then you'll have the series finale after that. So that's it. All the social media links are down below: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Discord, patreon.com/the Pensky File if you want to support the show. Clay, do you have anything you want to say?
I don't think so. Rotten Horror Picture Show, which is the horror podcast I'll be doing with Amanda from Real Ripe, Real Rotten, Wes Craven that we did, will be starting early next year, I think. And we just
which is actually like episode. 2 weeks. Early next year always sounds like
it's don't even tell me that. Don't even say that to me. And I was hoping to have the Batman Q&A out this week, but I guess it'll probably be next week. It's just I haven't had the time to cut it all together and stuff, but that'll be coming out soon too.
All right. Guys, thank you very much. Let us know what you thought about Extreme Thoughts. You can email us. You can write the comments on YouTube. You can do all that stuff. Catch us on Twitter. Strange episode. A very strange episode. Anyway, we'll be back with the Dogs of War, the penultimate episode of DS9. Thank you very much for listening. We'll see you later.